All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to make the final touches to your image. So again, I'm going to show you the layers palette here, and my layers palette is pretty organized. I have my black cat group with my curtains and black cat in it. I have my container group with my container and cat in it. So there's that. And then I have my puzzle cat layer. Well, we need to fix the color of this image, because I think it's a little red. I look at these white curtains and they look kind of red down here. And we also need to do a color change. One of the specifications for your assignment was to change the hue of one of your objects. You can change the hue of more than one if you want. First of all, I'm going to do an overall correction for the redness that's happening in this image. Now, to do that, I'm going to use my curves adjustment layer. So I'm going to click on my background so my curve goes right above it. And I'm going to go down to this yin yang, this circle that's half black, half white at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to choose curves. Curves is a one-stop shop, and I'll make my layers palette smaller so we can see the whole properties panel with the curve. So with the curves, we have, this is the curve. Notice it's a straight line right now. This is your blacks down in the bottom left corner. This is your whites or highlights in the upper right. When we move the curve up, we actually move it up and to the left. When we move the curve down, it goes down and to the right. Anything moves down gets darker. Anything that moves up gets lighter. Now I can adjust the density or the lightness and darkness of my image with this RGB curve, which is what I'm going to do right now. I like to click on the hand tool. I call it the hand tool. It has a really long, complicated name. Click and drag an image to make selection, I believe is what it's called, but I just call it the hand tool. I'm going to go in my image, and I think this area of my image, and this area especially, is a little dark. So notice when I'm doing that, a little point appears on my curve and moves around based on where my cursor is. So I'm just going to click in this space and put a cursor right there so I kind of know where to adjust. And if I move this point up, my image is going to get lighter and down darker. Now, I don't want to adjust this too much, but I want it a little lighter. I think the background then fits the density or the lightness and darkness of my objects better. All right, now to deal with the color. So with this RGB channel up here, I can pull down this drop-down menu and I have a red, green, and blue channel. Red channel will adjust the red and cyan, cyan being opposite of red. Green will adjust the green and magenta, with magenta being opposite of green. And blue will adjust the blue and yellow, with yellow being opposite of blue. So I'm going to go to the red channel because I see red right here. I still have my hand tool selected because it's a little darker around the outside. If it's unselected, it's lighter. Okay. I'm going to go click right down here on this curtain because I feel like it's red. Now, I want there to be less red, so I'm going to bring my curve down a little bit, and it changes quite dramatically, very fast. Now, I don't want it that dramatic. I just want it a little less red. And just moving it slightly like that seems to work. So I have this eyeball here. I also have the eyeball on my layer, but I can shut it off and see before and after. So I've made some small adjustments, but my image looks a whole lot better. It looks much more natural. Now, this layer is right above my background layer, so it's not affecting anything above it. If I were to move this curves layer above everything else, you see how now it's affecting the black cat, the puzzle cat, and the white cat. So that is important to consider. I don't think I need those cats to be any lighter or change, so I'm going to keep it below them. I like the warmth that's in the puzzle cat. I'm going to grab my move tool so you can see that better. The warmth in the puzzle cat, the warmth from the window in the black cat, and then the white cat as well. Okay, so that's the curves layer, and I'm going to call it color correction. Okay, now we need to change the color of some of our objects, change the hue. And I'm going to change the hue of the collar here on this puzzle cat. So I'm going to zoom in, get real close. There we go. I'm going to click on the puzzle cat layer. So I'm ready. And I'm going to grab my quick select tool because I think this will work. I'm going to make my mouse really small because this is a very small area. So I'm using the bracket keys on the keyboard to do that. And I'm just going to select that area and select that part 2 and this little corner here. So that looks good. Now to change the color, I'm going to do it with a hue and saturation adjustment layer. So I'm going to go to my yin yang. Again, I'm on the puzzle cat. So I go to my yin yang and I'm going to choose hue and saturation. And when I did that, because I made my selection first, and then I made the hue and saturation adjustment layer, it has made a mask over the area that I made my selection. Now with hue and saturation, I can just start adjusting the hue if I want, but if I want to be a little bit more precise, I'm just going to type in 0 up here so it's back to where it started. I can click on the hand tool, and I can click on the color I want to adjust, which is this one, and reds appears in this menu. So now I can adjust that color just by sliding the hue. I can make it kind of purpley, blue, cyan, and then I can go back and make it yellow or kind of cyan again. And I like that kind of cyan green color there. Now my selection wasn't perfect. I need to change it, kind of fix it a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in even more, get real close. And then I'm going to grab my paintbrush. I have a really small brush, that's good. I have the mask next to my hue and saturation selected. So I'm just going to go color with white to reveal. White is down here, but because I'm on the mask, I'm revealing from the selection. And I'm just kind of covering up those areas or adding those areas to the selection so there's no red sticking out. That's good. And again, if I make a mistake, oh, that doesn't look good. I just need to change my brush to black by hitting the X key. I'm going to make my cursor a little bigger and hide that area. You can also do to edit undo, but sometimes hiding it is easier. All right, Command 0. I'm going to go down here and call this Hue Puzzle Cat Color, so I know what that is, okay? If I shut that off, I have the red color back. This is all non-destructive. Okay. So one more thing I did in my demo piece is I changed the color of this white cat here. So I'm going to go find that. I have that's in the container in cat. So I'm going to click on the white cat layer. And I'm going to do hue and saturation again. Now because this white cat is completely isolated from its surroundings except for the object itself, I don't need to make a mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my yin yang tool down here and I'm going to choose hue and saturation. Now any adjustments I make will affect all the layers below it. So if I start moving my hue around, it's going to affect the back of the object, the background, and anything below that, which that's kind of cool. But notice the cat didn't change much because it's white. There's not a lot of color in it. So anyway, 2 problems that we have to solve. First problem, so that this selection only affects the cat layer, I'm going to hold down the Option key on my keyboard and hold my mouse right in between those 2 layers. And when I hold down the Option key, you see how that finger turns into the arrow with the square? I'm going to attach the hue and saturation layer to the white cat. So I just clicked, and now that layer is attached to the cat, so this layer will only affect the cat. Now, when there's something that doesn't have any color in it, if you want to make it colorful, you need to colorize it by clicking this Colorize in Hue and Saturation. Now, I don't usually recommend you coloring things that aren't naturally colored because it's hard to make them look natural. I'm going to try it with this cat anyway. So now I can move the hue around to whatever color I want, and it was kind of pink in my demo image, but I think I'm going to change it. I want to make it more yellowy. So I'm going to move it until I have that yellow color. I can make it more saturated, or I'm sorry, that's less saturated, or more saturated to the right, and I don't want it more saturated, maybe a little less saturated, then it looks a little more natural, like it's just kind of tinted in that color. Or I could tint it pink. I like yellow this time. So there we go. I'm going to make it a little more saturated. So I can adjust the intensity of the color just by the saturation slider, and I can adjust the hue of the color by the hue slider. The lightness and darkness slider probably isn't going to matter much, but you can certainly play with it and see what happens when you make it darker or lighter. So I'm just going to go back to 0. So there we have it, and that is still within, I'm going to expand the layers for you, and it's still within the container and cat group. In fact, if I want to, I could get that puzzle cat in a group, which would keep this much more organized. So I'm going to call this puzzle cat because the cat is made out of a puzzle. And I'm going to drag these 2 layers into that. So I have so if I start, I can shut off all these layers above it. I have my background layer. I have my color corrections to the background layer, which makes it look more natural. I have my container and cat, and I can go into that, and I can shut off all the layers and start with what I've got. So there's the shadow, there's my object, there's my, I'm sorry, that was the container, that's my object. I have a change in hue of my object, and then the top of the container. Then I have my puzzle cat. So there's the cat, and then there's the change in hue. Then I have my black cat in the window, which is my black cat, and then the window on top of that. So there's my project. I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to call it my name. And I'm not quite done yet, but that's going to be the end of the video for now.